Are you ready, kids?
Aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, Captain!
Oh! Send a pineapple letter. The nuclear testing center of the Marshall Islands, located between Hawaii and the Philippines, where dozens of nuclear weapons were tested between the years 1946 and 1958, which poisoned local residents and destroyed their homes.
What? Wait, what?
What?
That's kind of weird.
Come on, guys. SpongeBob, come on.
One of my favorite TV shows to this very day has some dark history behind its inspiration. While life on the seafloor may be filled with jellyfishing, flipping Krabby Patties, and karate, life on the surface has some haunting history. Everyone knows about the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. An estimated 110,000 civilians were killed. It's something that many Americans are still remorseful and ashamed of to this day. But these were just atomic bombs, and there was something so much more powerful.
I really see something that said, take a look.
That was the second plane that
The Soviet Union itself is no more.
With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase. These bombs are now in production, and even more powerful forms are in development.
U.S. President Harry S. Truman publicly announces his decision to support the development of the hydrogen bomb, also known as the H-bomb. It was capable of producing 1,000 times the amount of power than that of its little brother, the atomic bomb. The big question was, where would the U.S. test these? They needed a test site that was completely excluded from civilization. The former testing site of the atomic bombs was south of Los Alamos, New Mexico. But this place wouldn't do for the testing of the H-bombs. They needed a place even more remote. And they found one. But their definition of remote was a little skewed.
Let's eat. Oops.
Steven Hillenburg was the creator of the beloved yellow sponge, leading up to its debut in 1999.
Gotta be in top physical condition for today, Gary.
But Hillenburg's inspiration wasn't pulled from thin air. It was heavily inspired by the United States nuclear bomb testing site for the hydrogen bomb, the Marshall Islands, a chain of islands between Hawaii and the Philippines. Formerly part of Japan, these islands were taken over by the US as an outcome of the Second World War. The US decided that this was a perfect spot for the nuclear testing site of the new and most destructive weapon,
The hydrogen bomb.
The hydrogen bomb.
the hydrogen bomb. From the year 1946 to 1958, there were over 67 tests amongst the islands. But were they really remote? Remote means situated far from the main centers of population. But thousands of people lived amongst the islands at this time. Though the US military did move the islanders several miles away from the test sites, the effects of these nuclear detonations caused radiation poisoning, contamination to food and water sources, and in all just destroyed their homes. One of the islands in the chain was known as Bikini Atoll. Sound familiar? SpongeBob's hometown, Bikini Bottom, takes place at the bottom of the sea here.
Tell them that the United States government now wants to turn this great destructive force into something good for mankind, and that this experiments here at Bikini are the first step in that direction.
167 islanders living on the Bikini Atoll were moved 125 miles east to Rongerik Atoll. It was 1/6 the size of the Bikini Atoll. It had no good water and food sources, and some islanders believed in an old legend that evil spirits had lived there. During their departure, the US began to bring in 242 naval ships, 156 aircraft, 25,000 radiation recording devices, and roughly 5,400 experimental rats, goats, and pigs. What the islanders thought would be a few months turned into several years. Their food rations ran out, the island became uninhabitable, and they began to starve. It wasn't until June of 1948 that residents were moved to a better island of their choosing. (1954). The United States carries out one of its largest nuclear detonations in history, ending in disaster. codenamed Castle Bravo. A series of 7 tests named Operation Castle. Castle Bravo was one of the first tests of the series, using a bomb called the Shrimp. But ironically enough, there was literally nothing shrimpy about it. The Shrimp bomb relied on lithium deuteride as its fuel source. The bomb was 4.5 feet tall and nearly 15 feet long. In order for a nuclear weapon to reach its maximum destructive potential, it actually needs to detonate while it's still in the air. Allowing a nuke to detonate upon impact with the ground is easier, but it limits its destructive outcome because the Earth actually absorbs most of its power. So nuclear weapons actually contain electronic devices that can detect their distance from the Earth's surface and detonate at the perfect time. Not only does an aerial explosion cover more area, but it actually has 2 shock waves. The initial shockwave hits the Earth's surface, bounces off, and combines with the initial blast again to form one giant shockwave. Hey, I'm not, but they might be curious. How does a hydrogen bomb actually work? They might not know. I know, but they might not know. Sure. Inside the shell of a hydrogen bomb is a chemical bomb, a fission bomb, and a fusion bomb. And oddly enough, what keeps these bombs separated is styrofoam. That's it? I thought you said you knew this already. Yes. I mean, he is right. You would think something that has the capability of killing millions of people would be separated by something other than foam. But this foam actually plays a crucial part in the bomb's detonation. In the first phase, the chemical bomb is triggered and explodes. This causes the fission bomb to implode on itself. And due to the intense heat of the fission bomb imploding, this foam that separates the bombs actually melts and turns into plasma. And plasma is the key to beginning phase 2. The fusion bomb consists of an outer shell composed of uranium-238, and inside of that is another layer composed of lithium-6. And in the very center of that is a spark plug made of plutonium. The plasma created from the melted foam triggers this plutonium spark plug to ignite, which causes the lithium fuel to heat up and compress. Because of this, the lithium turns into hydrogen and undergoes nuclear fusion. This is where the name the hydrogen bomb comes from. But the last and most important part of this chain of events is the outer shell of the fusion bomb, the uranium-238. As nuclear fusion is occurring, this outer shell is struck and nuclear fission takes place. What? So in the end, it's a combination of this nuclear fission happening and nuclear fusion happening that makes these bombs so powerful. Luckily, hydrogen bombs have never been used by any military in any war to this date. But if we go back to March 1st, 1954, we get a pretty good idea as to what these bombs can do to people. 6:45 a.m. The 23,500-pound shrimp bomb was dropped on the Bikini Atoll. What was predicted to yield roughly 6 megatons of TNT ended up producing 15 megatons. To put this into perspective, 1 megaton is 1 million tons. So the shrimp bomb produced 15 million tons of TNT power. The Hiroshima bomb only produced 15,000 tons, literally 0.1% of the amount of power the shrimp bomb produced. A quote from military personnel stated, "In mere seconds, the sailors sensed that something unspeakably wrong was occurring. Battle-hardened men who served in World War II went to their knees and prayed. Some of these men even claimed they could see other soldiers' bones through their skin like an X-ray." Just seconds after detonation, a mushroom cloud 4.5 miles wide formed. It ultimately reached a height of 130,000 feet, nearly reaching a layer of our atmosphere known as the mesosphere. The explosion left a crater on the ocean floor with a diameter over 1 mile wide and a depth of 250 feet. The shrimp bomb was 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bombs dropped on Japan. The military recorded a steady increase in radiation levels that became so high that the men were ordered below decks and all doors were sealed shut. The fallout. The word fallout relates to the radioactive particles that are carried into the atmosphere after a nuclear explosion. The fallout of this test spread nearly 300 miles east. That's the distance from Washington, D.C. to Niagara Falls. Not only was the intended yield miscalculated, but the wind was going the wrong direction.
The meteorologists had predicted a wind condition which should have carried the fallout to the north of the group of small atolls lying to the east of Bikini. The wind failed to follow the predictions, but shifted south of that line, and the little islands of Rongelap, Rongerik, and Uterik were in the edge of the path of the fallout.
The day prior, the wind was going north like usual, but on the day of this test, the wind was going east, home to thousands of islanders. 8:15 a.m. 1.5 hours after the explosion, 23 fishermen aboard the Japanese fishing vessel named the Lucky Dragon watched in awe as a gritty white ash began to fall on them like snow. The men aboard the ship were oblivious to the fact that this was actually ash from the fallout of the hydrogen bomb that had just detonated. Shortly after they were exposed, radiation poisoning set in. Their skin became itchy and they began to vomit. Ultimately, one of these sailors even died. 10:15 a.m. 125 miles east of the test site, the fallout began on an island known as Rongelap Atoll. The 64 residents that occupied the island watched as a 2-inch layer of ash formed. Just southeast, 18 residents occupying the Guinea Atoll experienced the same thing. Islanders had no idea what this was, and some children played in the ash as if it were snow. That evening, the islanders experienced severe vomiting and diarrhea. Their hair began to fall out, and the island began to panic. Residents had received no warning from the US military. It wasn't until 2 days later that these residents were taken to seek medical treatment. Following the test of Castle Bravo, several islands were deemed unsafe and added to the off-limits zone. According to the Atomic Heritage, traces of radioactive material were later found in Australia, Japan, India, Europe, and even the United States. The guinea pigs. Roughly 1 week later, a US medical study called Project 4.1 was conducted on islanders exposed to the fallout, but a lot of criticism followed. The US failed to inform residents what was being conducted and never asked for their consent to be studied. The residents were told they were being treated for their various illnesses, but a translator was rarely present to explain what was actually going on. The exposed islanders were given pills to take, but with no explanation as to what they were or why they even needed them. The island most heavily impacted was the Rongelap Atoll. Residents had received 175 rads of radiation before being evacuated. And just to clarify how much this is, a chest x-ray produces 0.002. The average radiation absorbed per person in a given year is still only 0.62 rads. Even our own military was exposed. Several Americans were on the Rongerik Atoll at the time. They received an average dose of 78 rads. The study documented 29 children, 20 of which went on to develop tumors. Cases of infertility, lung cancer, uterine cancer, oral cancer, birth defects, these all skyrocketed. (1977), the Nuclear Coffin. A temporary effort to clean up the nuclear waste was made by the US military. Notice I said temporary. The US excavated nearly 96,000 cubic yards of soil. A crater left behind from a bomb test in 1958 was elected as the cleanup site for the project. Concrete slabs were placed into the crater to create the Run-It Dome. Some say that the dome was a waste of time and money. It only sealed away about 0.08% of the contaminated soil in the area. And because the dome was so poorly constructed, the dome has been slowly leaking radioactive material over the past couple years. As the ocean rises, experts say it's only a matter of time before sea level covers the dome. Not only was the Run-It Dome poorly built, but the Americans that constructed the dome were not given proper PPE. Several of the men died of cancer later in life. To this day, the US military denies that these men's illnesses were attributed to the construction of the dome. And as time went on, the temporary dome became permanent. There were no further efforts to clean up the nuclear waste. Surprisingly, the dome is not guarded, so you can technically visit the site if you'd like. Although I would strongly advise you to not do that unless you have the proper PPE. Why are you standing on that? What? Do you not know what's below you? Hey man, that's a free vasectomy right there. (1988), justice was served. The Marshall Islands Nuclear Claims Tribunal was formed. It was a court of justice designed to award compensation for cancers and other serious health effects attributed to the nuclear testings that took place on the Marshall Islands. The U.S. established a $150 million compensation trust fund for those affected. By the end of 2003, the tribunal had awarded more than $83 million in compensation for those who were physically affected by the tests. The tribunal also awarded $1 billion in property damage to the Marshall community. This sounds like a lot, and it is, but there's no amount of money that can bring back their loved ones or the islands that they once called home. It's said that some of the islands will still be radioactive 24,000 years from now.